phenomenal.
He does need a miracle.
He needs to win here and obviously win next week to put him on 3 and 4. 3 and 4 needs to be the 4th spot tiebreaker. He can't actually outright qualify. He does. I think the best case scenario is a tiebreaker. But the fact that he could even get there is ludicrous.
I think the key thing to bear in mind is most of it is out of Osha's hands, but what Osha can do is win these 2 games, and that puts him in with a chance of qualifying. Here we go. The game will be kicking off, and we've got a Beast Druid coming out from GreenSheep here, up against some kind of dragons. It is Warrior. I couldn't quite see what class it was there. It's going to be Dragon Warrior coming out from Osha.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because Dragon Warrior's kind of been falling out slightly because of the execute nerfs.
See, the thing is about Dragon Warrior, I was actually playing it again the other day, and it still does incredibly well on ladder. Like, I think it's just one of those decks that, generally speaking, will always do pretty well.
I think you're right. I think it plays on curves still incredibly well. The only issue is that sometimes there is a situation where you might need that 1-mana execute to get a big swing in tempo that goes in your favor. You just don't quite... So we're sometimes pushed out the limitations of that now. If you're still playing on curve, still slamming face, still controlling board purely through minions, then you're still in a good spot as Dragon Warrior.
Really nice starting hand for Osha here as well. He threw away some cards, but was able to get back another Fairy Dragon, which is quite important. And I wouldn't be averse to coining it out here, just to get some early presence. It can't be Wrathed. There's very little that can challenge it from the Druid side if you think it's something like a Malygos Druid, because obviously he won't have that read right now.
Sure.
We can see it is Beast Druid, and GreenSheep, not last week but the week before, did bring Beast Druid and was very successful with it, and a few of the players actually followed suit and brought Beast Druid last week because of his success.
The issue is, obviously, the natural turn 2 play for Osha would be another Fairy Dragon, and if he doesn't draw a dragon after that, then you can't activate your Twilight Dragon.
This is true.
So I think the theory for Osha is that, you know, worst case scenario, his turn 3 play could be Fairy Dragon and Blood to Ichor if he absolutely needs to, but now we can see he's got a turn 3 play here. If he doesn't draw a dragon in the next 2 turns, then he's going to be in a situation where actually that probably was the better play.
Yeah, I think still dropping Fairy Dragon turn 2 would be fine, because you could always coin out the Twilight Guardian for turn 4, and the odds are by that point you've drawn other answers for your actual turn 4, sorry, because Twilight Guardian would have been turn 3, but Innovating hand for GreenSheep does mean he's actually got an answer, because when you looked at his hand to start things off, it didn't look like he was going to have much to work with, but has found his way onto the board.
Actually, he's in a really good position. He's got Mark of Visage in hand. Also has lots of answers to non-spell immune minions. And to be honest, Osha is in this situation where there's not much he can play that feels incredibly satisfying. You know, if Monkey dies on board and you have to trade Fairy Dragon in anyway, wouldn't mind potentially seeing the Twilight Guardian, but we know that dies.
It does. You might even consider Fierce Monkey and maybe coining out Blood to Ichor, but I mean, I don't particularly like that. I think either way, that's a pretty ugly turn for Osha, so he just has to go for the natural on-curve Monkey.
Theory for Osha now is coin Blackwing Corruptor if he does trade naturally into this Fierce Monkey.
Yep.
Yeah, and then you get to keep your Fairy Dragon alive. We'll see whether GreenSheep is going to opt to do that. Doesn't actually have a different way to clear it, but potentially could just try and build up a board behind it. Obviously has Druid of the Flame to go with, so it could build up a bit more board presence, but I wouldn't be too surprised to see GreenSheep really just go for this trade regardless.
I think there's two options for GreenSheep personally here. He could Mark of Visage and see what happens, and he could always Wrath afterwards, or he just swipes. He's actually going to think about doing it this way, okay.
Okay, so we're going to kill that with Hero Power. And I think he's going to trade with the Bear as well. I think I saw the arrow come across. So still puts himself in range of the Blackwing Corruptor, but does at least clear the board completely.
The benefit for Osha here over the Mark of Visage play is that he can now successfully get a clean Corruptor trade in. I guess that would have happened anyway. You'd have lost your Fairy Dragon to make that trade, but does mean there's nothing on board now for GreenSheep to use Mark of Visage. His next turn probably would be Druid of the Flame and then Mark of Visage, but yeah, we'll have to see.
It never feels that great to play Mark of Massage, Mark of Visage, onto a minion that can't attack that turn, because obviously you get the card draw, but you don't always necessarily get that much value out of the buff.
Could be punished, but depending on what is obviously in the opposition hand, something like an Execute could be quite painful.
Yeah. See, I actually don't even mind double Blood to Ichor here, you know.
I think against Beast Druid, just keeping your board control is extremely important and not allow them to kind of ramp out of control, especially when you're getting into that 6 mana range.
Exactly.
And you know that the Warden is a thing you need to kind of avoid here.
Yeah, and that's got to be the #1 thing on his mind right now is when can Menagerie Warden come in and how can it punish me? Like, just negate that card at all costs has to be priority for Osha up against Beast Druid these days. I mean, let's look at the rest of Osha's hand and see what his other answers are. Because obviously we've said the double up Bloodtwicker is an option. Still would have 3 mana remaining at that point, so you could drop the Fairy Dragon if you wish. But the other option right now is just dropping Twilight Guardian and hiding your 5/4 behind that.
Yeah, if I were to do that, I would probably trade my 5/4 in anyway, just knowing that it is going to be Menagerie Warden turn. Because then he only gets a 4/1 out of it, which isn't exactly massively threatening, and it is also good if you end up drawing a Ravaging Ghoul off the top or something along those lines. But he knows how scary Menagerie Warden can be. I think he watched the Hello Leroy games last week.
Yeah.
And I think the history of Osha, he's always been a relatively safe player, and he will go for the calculated risks. He won't just kind of do something crazy and just be like, well, I'll just hope he doesn't have that card. He usually plays around the fact, assuming they do have the worst possible card.
Given his RNG, my friend, I think
I'm not entirely surprised.
Yeah, I'm not entirely surprised.
So now this becomes an extremely awkward turn for GreenSheep, because dropping Menagerie Warden by itself feels quite ugly. I mean, swiping, you pretty much what are you killing? I mean, perhaps you could Wrath first, and then you can clear 2 of them, but then you're swiping a 2/2, which doesn't feel good either. So he's just going to have to hero power down a 2/2 here and play his own 2/2 in Enchanted Raven, but as a 6 mana turn, it's not that great.
It's not the greatest 6 mana turn, but at the same time, at least he had something he could achieve right. Takes out one of the 2/2s, also contests the board. Whatever trades into this 2/2 does end up dying, so it's not ideal, but it's not the worst turn ever from GreenSheep as well. We've seen turn 6s where people just have to pass and just wish that they could have done something.
I actually don't think that's awful. I mean, to be honest, he was in a luxurious state because Osha doesn't really have a massively threatening board down, and Enchanted Raven, like he correctly said, Munch, it does contest either Fairy Dragon or Slime. It's obviously going to be Slime, but it contests one of these straight up for 1 mana, leaving only a 3/2 to go face. It really just depends on what Osha can develop this, and he is just going in on the 6/6.
Fully agree with this. Like, I think a lot of players, when they've got especially if you've not played that much Dragon Warrior, you see the Dracnoid Crusher, you see the potential of it, but you forget the fact that a 6/6 for 6 mana, that's not a bad thing to put on the board, especially on turn 6. It's just like, you got to think of the potential snowball. And
again, Osha, one of these players who will consider what can come out on turn 7. And obviously the Curator is a thing. It's a very annoying minion, a 4/6 body. It is a decent body, so he's putting Dracnoid Crusher on there because it can deal with it. If he had played the Twilight Guardian instead, it becomes a really awkward turn for him.
He trades effectively with just the Dracnoid Crusher into the Curator here. You saw him actually do a little jig, because I think he essentially predicted that would be a turn 7 play from GreenSheep and said, this is my best case scenario. This is a pretty good turn as well, especially if you just slam the Twilight Guardian down afterwards, because we know that Druid isn't very good at dealing with large board states, and also it means that you probably, as the Druid, want to try and swipe that Frothing Berserker off the board as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, especially at 8 mana as well. At 9 mana it becomes scary, because what we can see as a Druid plus swipe, Osha will know that is a thing, and that is one of the best board clears from Druid.
Yeah.
But at 8 mana it becomes maybe a double swipe possibility, which you do have to be worried about. But even if you were to do that, I mean, he's still looking alright. I think the Twilight Guardian might still survive that, depending on the way he does it. But we can see there isn't 2 swipes in hand. So this now becomes a tricky turn, I think.
I think the best turn is the best play is the most mana efficient play here for GreenSheep. You can't leave that Frothing Berserker up, so oh well, he's actually going to leave the Frothing Berserker up, maybe hoping to draw a swipe off the top.
But he wouldn't be able to play that swipe.
No, sorry, I meant Wrath off the top. My bad.
Okay.
This is interesting. He's actually going to get rid of the 6/2. Okay, but with how many minions on board, we have to see how much damage that's going to be.
This is what I was thinking. He's already up to 5 plus 6, 7,
Double
8, 9.
Ravaging
Double
Ghoul.
Ravaging Ghoul.
Is that's lethal, right? I think
13 it'll have after just the Ravaging Ghouls if he...
No, it's
so
not.
no, it's
not quite lethal.
just 19 damage, but 19 damage is
still a lot.
Still decent. You could even consider dropping the Azure Drake first. Oh, in fact, no, it would be more than that. It would be 20 damage because of the second Ravaging Ghoul being tagged. But if you drop the Azure Drake first, you also look for future answers and things like that.
Yeah.
You still have a Ravaging Ghoul to potentially take control of the board later.
But do you want to? I mean, okay, he didn't answer the Ghoul. Sorry, he didn't answer the Frothing Berserker right then. Do you want to try and get the most value out of it and hope that you top deck something like one of your weapons?
I mean, you've got Corcoran Elites in this deck,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
If you can just get them low enough, you can look at just ending the game. And I feel like since he played the Ravaging Ghoul first, you've got to assume he's going to go for the second
I counted 22 exactly. As long as he hits first with the Fairy Dragon, I'm fairly certain this is actually exactly 22 damage.
Do you know what I did? I added up the amount of damage it was going to gain, but not its actual initial damage. I'm good at maths.
Oh, right, yeah. I was almost certain it was lethal,
yeah,
but...
no, I can't count. No, I did the maths, but I was going off 0 attack to start instead of 4 attack to start. Either way, does have the lethal. So there we go. What a way to end the game. Double Ravaging Ghoul into the Frothing Berserker.
I'm just not confident.
I feel I'm almost embarrassed because it's usually Ex-Scoundrel that,
this is what
fluffs up the subs.
When someone says
taking up the gauntlet,
it's not lethal, I just go, okay then. I'll sit back. I will believe that person.
It's
but then I was like,
guys.
wait a minute, 22 is lethal.
If you were watching last week, everybody, we had some serious issues with probability. And my confidence in maths is pretty low right now. So I was like, I don't want to say it's lethal, but I think it's lethal. And then Munch shut me down. So I was like, Munch was right last week. Munch is definitely going to be right this week.
I'm so sorry.
It happens to the best of us.
I can say nothing more on the subject.
Confidence is slightly regained. It's not as devastating as not knowing how to multiply fractions.
The worrying thing about the whole situation is my maths confidence hasn't been knocked slightly, which makes me question where it came from in the first place. But let's take another look at the decks that we still have running in this series and see what these guys are going to be bringing up next. Because obviously that's Dragon Warrior out of the way. That's dealt with. And, you know, that's actually... that's going to feel good right now. Because Dragon Warrior is one of those decks, similarly to like Miracle Rogue, where sometimes you can just draw a hand that loses. So, I mean, let's have a look what we've still got remaining. Mage and Druid going to be here for Osha.
I think it's an important win. I think you're right, especially against Beast Druid as well.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those games where you're just constantly contesting board, and perhaps maybe he could have swiped the Frothing Berserker, but you're not always expecting double Ravaging Ghoul, I guess. But I mean,
when you're only that far through your deck, like I wouldn't have expected Ravaging Ghoul personally, but it's going to be Cthulhu Druid. Now, this is something that Osha ran as soon as Whispers of the Old Gods came out. Osha was a big fan of Cthulhu Druid, and I don't know if you have also noticed this, Dan Gaskin, but Cthulhu has been making a slight comeback in the Warrior variant recently.
It has, certainly. People are going back to Cthulhu once again, trying to get some reliability, especially after the Yogg nerf. They were like, right, so
which
OP
old god do I fall back on?
Which next one do I go for? Who can we nerf next, boys?
Yeah.
So this is something really interesting, by the way. I just wanted to point out, most Malygos Druids would not use Living Roots turn 1 to place down 2 saplings.
True.
Does this give GreenSheep an indication?
One thing I would say, though, is especially against when you know it's a Beast Druid already, I would probably drop the 1/1s, just because you have to contest board.
That's very, very true. Now, actually, Osha's in a very awkward situation where he either goes straight for the Wild Growth, or he uses the Wrath.
I think I'd be fine with Wrath in here, because
well.
you don't want to give the Beast Druid any kind of mana advantage at all. You just get rid of that Dunas Aspirant straight off, and then you could always Wild Growth next turn, and then the following turn is an Azure Drake as well.
It's like, you really want a Wild Growth, but you know that it's just too greedy, right? It's like, you lose so much tempo for that.
Especially because you've got that Cthulhu's Chosen in hand, you're like, oh, I just want to get that out next turn, and it'll be fantastic, but like you said, against the Beast Druid, where things can start to like roll out of control pretty quickly, you're basically putting bets on him to say, well, next turn, if you want to achieve the same sort of status, you have to have Wild Growth in hand. And also, he can Wild Growth next turn, and he then has a follow-up play of Azure Drake, so it's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, one scary thing for Osha, though, is we can see there's an Innovate Fandral available for GreenSheep, and there's not much of an answer for Osha, so this is actually going to be difficult to deal with. Ancient of War going to be the draw as well, so literally no answer available, which means GreenSheep next turn gets his Fandral turn, he's going to have Wrath available, or he gets his 3/2 charge.
I think he'll probably go for Druid of the Saber just because there's nothing really you want a Wrath on the board. The 2/1/1s aren't doing particularly any form of threat right now, especially after he sees the wild growth.
Are you ready for the Druid of the Flame top deck?
Oh, that would be marvellous.
That's devastating if Druid of the Flame comes out.
I guess that's one of the bad things about having to Wrath a 2-3. That is threatening, but knowing that Beast Druid and Druid in general does have that innovate option, if you have no means of board clear, apart from that, then you could have saved it. He could have even traded in both 1/1s and then hero powered, but I mean, it's still, you wouldn't have anything to deal with the 3/5.
What Osha has to consider here is what is the worst case scenario for me next turn? Is it Druid of the Flame? Is it something like Living Roots into Power of the Wild, which can still be a thing? I think Beast Druid still runs something like Power of the Wild. I don't know if they sub it out for Mark of Visage. I'm going to sneeze, sorry lads.
You do have a cough button.
I do.
I'm the only one who doesn't have a cough button, FYI. You guys are privileged today.
I've been using mine so far.
I'm not going to
Good
sneeze.
stuff. But here we go. Actually, interestingly, trades one of the 1/1s into Fandral, setting up for a potential swipe. Here we go. Does get the 3-2 charge. There we go. Twin Emperor comes out, but, you know, doesn't feel great. Azure Drake is an option just to get more card draw, but
None of these feel fantastic.
Honestly, I think I would prefer Cthulhu's Chosen, but I don't know whether I'm just saying that because of Caster Vision and because I see Wrath.
I genuinely would prefer Cthulhu's Chosen just because with Fandral on board, getting such a big value Wrath is always going to be an issue. You know that you haven't baited out Wrath with just 1/1s on board right now, so you do have to be wary of the fact that you haven't dealt with Fandral and Wrath is still a serious problem. That's why I just hope I cycle something with Azure Drake that brings me into an answer next turn.
I guess another reason to play Cthulhu's Chosen is you want to start building up your Cthulhu so that Twin Emperor of their Claw will actually initiate his battle cry. Because he's not played any Cthulhu minions, right? So that is not going to be working. I mean, Ancient of War is obviously there at turn 7 instead, but still.
So the argument for Azure Drake is you cycle and you get one card ahead, so you could search for an answer. The argument for Cthulhu's Chosen is it's not as weak to Wrath.
to be honest, I think in that situation I would probably go for the Azure Drake too, just because your hand is so awful right now. You've got to find something, and especially since you've got, you know, you got you to an Emperor Veclaw, but you've had no build on Cthulhu just yet. So do you really want to drop that for 7 mana ever? I don't think you do.
No, I think he's going to charge a Druid of the Claw here. You can't leave Fandral open for another turn. It's just too risky, especially going into turn 5. I mean, okay, the other option is that you can drop Cthulhu's Chosen and use hero power to gain an armor, but for me personally, I am just too worried about what that Fandral can achieve being on the board for such a long period of time.
I think turn 2 Innovate Fandral Stack Helm is just hard to come back from no matter what you're playing. I mean, okay, executes and stuff can really change the game, but this is a tough situation for Osha. I think I agree with you.
Even the situation where you've got an answer immediately, like Execute in hand, think of the removal that immediately demands, and then when you get to Menagerie Wardens and things like that later on in the game, it's just such a horrible situation to have to claw your way back from. One thing I will say though...
Oh, thank goodness!
Yeah, got away with that one. Other Innovate in hand now for GreenSheep, but other than just his charge 3/2, and he got the Wrath as well, he didn't get unbelievable amounts of value out of the Fandral. We've seen, you know, there's so many minions that just get ridiculous value. When you look at things like Ancient of War and, you know, Druid of the Flame, they get so much value out of that buff, but didn't... Obviously, the minion on board itself has really snowballed this game, but it could have been worse.
Yeah, that Druid of the Flame, if he'd got it earlier, would have been mental. If he hadn't dealt with Fandral that turn, that would have been Druid of the Flame, Innovate, Stranglethorn Tiger, and that would have been a monstrous turn. I think that was the case anyway. No, because he only had 5 mana at the time. That's a lie.
It's okay.
That's a lie, Kinham. But he could have done it next turn. I'm just gonna shut up.
So do you take 5 damage to face here and just swipe?
Yeah.
And use your Tiger, and you've still got a 3/2 and a 2/2 on board. But I guess now Osha gets to play the game of putting up lots of taunts, turn after turn after turn. But he can't put that Twin Emperor still, just because he hasn't built it up yet.
Ooh, I think GreenSheep was making the decision, do I leave 2 minions on board or do I leave 1 minion? And now we can see.
Yeah, there is a Mulch in hand, so unfortunately he made the wrong decision on that one. Mulch will punish GreenSheep.
Mulch into Fandral.
I'm ready. It's going to drop the Druid of the Claw as well. It's an Argent Horse Rider, which, to be honest, isn't the worst watch ever. It's such a useful minion, but...
You can just swipe Argent Horse Rider this... but, I mean, it doesn't feel great to do it, but you can still deal with it.
Yeah, you kind of... with just a 1-1 on board and your opponent being a Druid, that will just... 2-1, sorry, but it'll still get cleared away by the hero power, so... I do like dropping the bigger minion, just so you've still got a bit more presence on board.
You can swipe face and then... deal with it easily next turn.
I wonder how scared Osha's going to be now. Whether he might just drop a Twin Emperor, but not as a twin.
That's not bad with the Cthulhu's Chosen though.
Yeah, if he's thinking about this, if you brand then Cthulhu's Chosen, that then puts the Twin Emperor up to the range, right? It means that you would have to Battlecry next turn, but are you going to live? Is probably what Osha is thinking right now.
I mean, what's the worst case scenario for him? The worst case scenario.
Savage Roar?
Yeah, swipe Savage Roar.
But I mean, even that doesn't quite kill you. Oh, man. No, that doesn't quite kill you either. So I think
it's okay.
This is in reasonably good nick as well. And if this Brown Bros beard survives, I mean, that's 3 twins on board. That is some triplets there for you boys.
Yeah, I don't think this will be allowed to survive. I'm sure GreenSheep's well aware of that. However, he did just top deck Ragnaros. It's a very tempting card to play on turn 8 regardless of the situation, but he's going to maintain his composure and play the board correctly.
He will indeed, but he will be met by that sorry fate that Twin Emperor Veclaw is a thing.
It is a card that exists.
But there is that chance that Ragnaros ends up going into this, 50-50 because you can clear at least one of these off board.
Yeah, it's because, I mean, naturally you would probably hero power down the Tiger, right, and just take the 5. You've seen both swipes.
Yeah, I suppose.
Oh, it's so
feels bad though.
It feels so bad. I mean, then you enter into a 1 in 3 with Ragnaros. No one likes 1 in 3s with Ragnaros.
So if he's worried about Ragnaros, then he would probably just take out the 2-1 instead and say, fine, you can kill one of these minions. I've got the Arakoa next turn. I can keep putting threats on board. I'm probably going to outvalue you every turn.
Yeah, I mean, you're at the point in the game where you are going to start just plain outvaluing the Beast Druid, to be fair. The only concern is what are you punished by not killing the 5-1? The fact that it's a very valuable trade onto your 4-6.
I mean, he's seen both swipes.
I mean, another Wrath could come out, but the thing is, these other... well, obviously we can see both players' hands, but these other threats don't necessarily give GreenSheep an answer to the board, because he can't drop the Ragnaros, he doesn't have that much else to play, so...
I mean, he can drop the Ragnaros, it looks like
he can this time. I mean, like, if he had a different threat on top of it, but... Here we go, Ragnaros is going to come down. Well, let's roll the dice on this one. It's going to hit a Twin Emperor, so Osha survives another day. Doesn't find his Cthulhu though, which would have been the miraculous answer that he needed.
You're still in this awful situation where it's now going to be like Ragnaros lottery. It's going to be clearing high-value minions off board for you.
Yeah, because you're worried about it hitting face, but at the same time, if it's clearing your minions, then how are you going to win the game? I mean, I like the innovate into the hero power just to take the 2-1 off board. Do you take down Enchanted Raven, or I think you hit face here. You've got to be looking at how do I actually win this game.
Yeah.
Because in the end, Ragnaros is just going to slowly destroy me. I don't know if there's another mulch in Osha's deck, but there are very little means to get rid of this Ragnaros.
What you punish by not killing the Raven is the only question. You've already seen one? No, you haven't seen any Mark of Ishaj this game, have you?
No.
No.
But at the same time, if he had one, he would have used it last turn, I think.
I much prefer going face.
Yep.
I think you need to start threatening lethal yourself, and Ragnaros will eventually just outvalue you. So,
yeah.
I mean, if Osha was to find a swipe and this Ragnaros was to hit perhaps his Twilight Elder, then he wins the game.
This is actually going to be an incredibly close one. Let's see what Rag hits. Is going to be the Twin Emperor, so stays in the game. If you can find something like Cthulhu, imagine if Osha just draws Cthulhu right now. That definitely turns everything on its head. You can't... Oh, you could kill the Ragnaros here. You could trade both your minions in. It's so risky. You still have a taunt on board, though.
I quite like essentially running your 5-7 to face, maybe taking a value trade with your 3-4.
Yeah, into the 5-2.
I mean, you're in a position where you're going to basically be in a 33% chance again.
It is definitely squeaky bum time for Osha at the moment.
my favorite time.
I really dislike Ragnarok's defining game moments because they're always so tense.
They are very tense.
It's
Like,
uncomfortable.
It's like do you ever watch TV and you see people like argue on TV and reality TV shows and you always feel it's really awkward? I get like that watching Ragnaros.
Ragnaros is essentially the Hearthstone equivalent of Big Brother.
or Jeremy Kyle.
Or like the end of Apprentice. You know? Do you know what I mean? Production. When you watch the end of Apprentice, and there's always like people argue, and you get a bit like,
oh, Living Roots. So that means he can actually take out another minion and
it's a 50-50.
make it a 50-50 here.
And
GreenSheep doing everything to put it in his hands.
The horrible thing about this 50-50 for Osha as well is it's a 50-50 that he loses, but if he does lose, he has nothing on the board anyway. He has no way back into the game. So GreenSheep does manage to take that one in the end, and while obviously at the end it was kind of a roll of the dice with Ragnaros, at the same time, even if he doesn't win on that turn, it's still getting to a point where Osha's like, how do I actually get back in this game?
Yeah, the Living Roots was extremely important. If he wasn't able to take down that Twilight Elder and then the Twilight Elder had taken that Ragnaros, there's still every hope, especially if he had drawn something like a Cthulhu or a Swipe. So it's one of those things. It was well played by both, actually. I think Osha did well to keep in the game for so long, and GreenSheep had Ragnaros.
Do you know, if he hadn't taken the value trade...
So what you think if he had actually just killed Ragnaros off? Or?
If he hadn't taken the value trade, would he have been able to kill both... I don't think... He wouldn't have been able to kill both Dark Arakoa even with... Oh, he would have done with Hero Power. Obviously, he then would have put himself into a 50-50 where he actually could have lost the game, which was maybe slightly statistically better for Osha, but... I mean, you still have Cthulhu Druid, which if it ramps properly, it acts like a traditional ramp druid. It's very difficult to deal with. And we're going to see him going up against this, well, looks like, again, face variant of the Secret Hunter.
Yeah, with the Argent Squire, again, I'd suggest this is probably a very similar deck to what GreenSheep brought last week, which had Leroy Jenkins in it. It was just a very aggressive version of this kind of Secret Hunter. And it does spiral out of control, this Secret Hunter, especially, as we can see, Secret Keeper and something like Swipe can be detrimental against other classes. I mean, Shaman traditionally struggles against it. Double Secret Keeper.
What a way to kick things off. Osha is going to be pulling his hair out after that turn. That is disgusting. And we can see as well, obviously Wild Growth has to be the first turn right here for Osha. He has no other options. But Cat Trick available against a Druid, basically all of his answers are going to be spells.
Yeah.
So actually, I think I prefer Cat Trick over Snipe.
I do as well.
Because Cthulhu's Chosen is a thing.
I prefer Cat Trick just because Swipe to deal with one of these just spawns an even more powerful minion off the top, and Wild Growth, like, you know, if another Wild Growth or Wrath came out, all of these things just give you like extra power on board.
He's going to have to blow that Swipe already. Very early and, you know, not a very comfortable one to have to use. And now, with Cat Trick still in hand, he can punish the Nourish next turn. So we'll drop that Cat Trick and even gets an Argent Squire on board as well. Secret Keeper now to 3-3. And as we can see, no real answer to it unless he wants to play his Druid of the Claw. But Snipe is in play.
Yeah, I mean, Druid of the Claw is the best answer to Swipe because it survives, but how often do you see Azure played into Snipe? And it just happens far too often. Thankfully, Osha's not going to take that risk.
Yeah, I think one of a less experienced player would be tempted to try and drop the Druid of the Claw as a 4-4, try and charge it, but Osha, he's played against this deck before. He's like, I am not going to play into your Swipe.
But what does Osha need now? Because with the Cat Trick on board, the Eagle Horn Bow now in play, he's going to be starting to receive some serious pressure, and I don't know if you have many tools left with Druid to be able to deal with everything that comes out. I mean, even with this Wrath now,
it's still going to spawn a 4-2. So there's going to be a lot of pressure coming from GreenSheep, and if it is the same deck from last week, then we know that it's just got a lot of aggression in there to finish you off, which is what is scary. And Explosive Trap as well would suggest that it is more of an aggressive variant.
Well, Fandral, he's got Innovate in hand as well. Next turn he could Fandral into Nourish, but he has actually used that Innovate this time, so not going to be able to.
Osha not too happy with that situation.
Feels Osha, man.
Feels Osha, man.
Well, Barnes, if you've run out of things to do on a turn, Barnes is always going to be an option. GreenSheep has that available to him. But I think also kind of wants to start weaving in hero powers, so I think that was the decision he was making. Do I just drop something like an explosive trap and hero power as well? But
Acidic Swamp Ooze.
That's basically the Face Hunter variant of Harrison Jones, just to give you the sort of edge in a mirror matchup. Interesting that obviously you include Barnes for a couple of situations, but the best one sometimes can be just a 1-1 Cloaked Huntress, because then you can start spamming free traps as well.
Sometimes Argent Horse Rider can be quite nice as well. 1-1 with charge if you are running that. I mean, Argent Squire isn't too bad either. So, I mean, I love Barnes as a card. I know many people hate it, but it adds some fun, doesn't it?
GreenSheep really rolled the dice with that turn when he just goes face with the 4-2. He was basically saying, you've already used one swipe, I don't think you've got another one. Because with an Azadrake on hand, if Osha had swipe, he could completely clear the board this turn. But unfortunately for him, we know for a fact Osha does not have that answer available. Does have a Living Roots though, so can take out that cat in the hat anyway.
Indeed. Unfortunately, just through the pure damage that GreenSheep is putting out, Osha's probably lost this game. Just too quick of a start here for GreenSheep.
Yeah, just one off lethal with quick shot. I think you play the explosive trap just to try and set up a lethal next. Yeah, I mean, why not quick shot now? To be honest, it doesn't really make a difference if you do it now or next turn. And there is no way back into it for Osha now, I'm afraid. Not even Cthulhu can save you.
He's already used his Innovate, so no way back in. And, well, this is a very quick series so far, but now GreenSheep has found himself a lead. 2-1 is the score, and Osha, with it all to play for, let's just remind ourselves, if Osha loses this game, he's out of the tournament. Well, he's not out of the tournament, but he still gets to play next week.
He's out of the tournament.
He's out of the runnings for playoffs. He will have no possible way back towards finals.
Kind of have knock-on effect, because if Osha knows that he can't make finals, then next week he might just put on the show and he might bring some meme decks, he might bring some fun decks, and depending on who he's playing, that could really make a difference for someone who's looking for a win. Or if they're looking for a win and you come up against decks that you're not expecting to play, you might end up losing.
Well, actually, one of the conditions where Hello Leroy doesn't end up qualifying is where GreenSheep wins twice and Hello Leroy loses twice. So GreenSheep getting a win here is actually not only significant for Osha not advancing or having hope in the tournament, it's also significant that it puts pressure on Hello Leroy that he needs to pull out a win. And with ball control as his match today, that's a tough one to think that you're going to have a...
And bizarrely as well, this is actually a super important game for both Mysterious and, I think it's Cypher, if I'm correct? Yeah. No, it's Mysterious and Leroy, sorry. If two of the players that are 2 and 3 in the standings right now lose this week, both of them are qualified, assuming that Mysterious wins this game. So if Mysterious can beat Cypher and GreenSheep lost this game, Mysterious is through this week, and Hello Leroy also would be through this week. So actually, there are players outside of this game that are like biting their nails right now, praying for certain results. And GreenSheep actually almost went with a default loss this week, and had that been the case, that would have completely tipped things on its head.
It definitely would. I mean, people were probably praying that default loss did happen. You might be wondering why there may have been a default loss. They would think there was just some issues with deck submitting, but GreenSheep did submit his decks. There was just an issue with the internet not sending emails, which is a thing, apparently.
What this fancy internet.
I know. But now he's here, he's 2-1 up, and Osha is staring down what looks like, well, it is, a Cthulhu Warrior with a noticeable inclusion of Fool's Bane, which is basically Brawl, but you use your health, right?
Essentially.
Well, I mean, in theory, it's like Brawl that doesn't leave one alive.
Depending on how many there are, yeah.
I'm really interested in this Osha deck, however. It's something that's also quite interesting to me, because with the inclusion of Acolyte of Pain, you immediately start thinking, is this Freeze Mage? But it's not really, because it's got Arcane Blast and Arcane Missiles and all this kind of stuff.
Is it Casino Mage?
Yeah, it could actually be no, he's got two Forgotten Torches. Yeah, it could be Casino Mage with Yogg at the end. With this many spells, you'd feel like maybe.
I mean, this is going to be Barnes. If he wants to play Casino, Barnes is the way forward. Can also Azadrake on turn 5, though, which I think always is going to feel pretty good to do. And now GreenSheep. This is an interesting variant of that Cthulhu Warrior. Baron Geddon in play as well, so kind of preempting things like the mid-range Shaman that
For sure.
just completely annihilates that
I mean,
board.
Baron Geddon's found its way into quite a few control decks just because of the Shaman matchup, because there are obviously a lot of 2-health minions because of the totems, but don't know if it will come into play during this game, and it's a lot of damage in Osha's hand, to be honest.
A lot of direct damage as well, which is kind of where Osha can maybe start to make a play around. You want, if you know this is Cthulhu, he's seen the Cthulhu's chosen, right? You want to start accelerating damage before things like Ancient Shield Bearer come down, because especially with Bronzebeard turn 9, that's essentially a death sentence for any mage that was expecting to win through direct damage alone.
Now we've got an interesting turn. I mean, do you consider just dropping the Flame Waker here? Obviously, there are some spells you can use to clear things away, like the Arcane Blast, like the Forgotten Torch, etc. But it does mean that it almost definitely dies to even just Force Vent next turn.
I don't even mind coin Fireland's Portal, but then obviously you lose the synergy with the Flame Waker on that. I actually probably think that Barnes is fine here, because you always have the backup of just using a Frostbolt or a Forgotten Torch if you need to.
Well, he's running out of time. Needs to do it quickly. He's going to coin out the Forgotten Torch as well. And he gets... Oh, he gets himself a Flame Waker as well.
Oh, because he ran out of... Oh, no.
That's... that could have been great, but unfortunately was not. Well, never mind.
If he had had time and saw that the Flame Waker had come out, then...
And also hit twice.
He could have... yeah. Unfortunately, he's going to be punished by Baron Geddon.
Yeah, but Baron Geddon will also be punished by Violence Portal, so...
Well, it will.
That's what makes the world go round.
Hey, and he gets a Cthulhu minion if he's not relevant, because he's not running Cthulhu Druid this time round. But, you know, I just think it's nice because there's lots of Cthulhu themes going through this match.
Doomcall actually going to be played there.
If he does get Yogg, if he does play Yogg and later gets a mind control on Cthulhu, then you never know.
It's pretty solid.
Look at all this damage!
It's a lot of damage.
I mean, I kind of like Flame Waker Frostbolt? Arcane Blast?
Wake up, Frostbolt.
Just
Well, I mean,
start ramming this damage
This
in.
isn't going to be a deck that runs Icelands, or at least it's unlikely to be, I would say. Can't say I've played this particular variant of Mage Hole too much, but...
Osha's got...
He's actually just going to start going face.
I mean, that's scary for me, because you aren't considering the prospect of the Ancient Shield Bearer, but at this point only gets him back to 20 HP.
I mean, when you've got 2 Fireballs in hand, you've still got another Flame Waker, you've got Blood Mage Thanos and an Arcane Blast. It's, you know, it's not that scary of a decision, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know, we'll see whether or not he'll be punished.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Uh-oh. GreenSheep not expecting the burst that's about to come out. And well, that's game.
That is game.
Straight up game.
Some celebration from Osha. Finally, some justice for the poor man, who has not had the best of times in the UK Premiership, but now he is tied 2-2 with GreenSheep, and maybe on his way for his first official win of the season, not a default win.
Absolutely.
Well, it's going to be Cthulhu Druid versus Cthulhu Warrior now.
It will be indeed.
This could come down to Cthulhu, I think it's fair to say. It's going to be an interesting one, though. I can't say I've played that matchup specifically.
I mean, I think I did, but it was about 6 months ago.
So if we take Cthulhu out of the picture and we look at traditional Ramp Druid versus traditional Control Warrior, which is essentially what you've got here with just the Cthulhu variants added in, A lot of this is going to come down to whether you can activate your Cthulhu quick enough. B, it'll come down to whether Druid gets Wild Growth, because if you can accelerate your mana and just start slamming down big threats that the Warrior then has to spend mana and now 2 mana and Execute to deal with, you often have an advantage as the Ramp Druid. Traditionally, if you ever played this matchup without Cthulhu involved, Ramp Druid always did well into Control Warrior, because you were just putting down big threats before the Warrior had the resources to deal with them.
And also, it's just a matter of the Druid just simply has more big threats than the Warrior has resources to remove big threats. You've only got 2 Shield Slams and 2 Executes. Beyond that, when you're dealing with things like Ancient or War, what do you have to deal that 10 HP?
I guess the Ancient Shield Bearer maybe could play a part in this, especially if you can get it off with a Brown Bronzebeard as well and get that 20 armor, possible 40 armor if you're able to keep it on board and play another one. I mean, that's obviously a very rare possibility, but this is going to be a really interesting matchup, and actually I think quite a fresh one, because we haven't seen this matchup before in Premiership. I don't think many people have seen this matchup at all on any broadcast, really. So this is going to be a good one.
Wow, Osha prompting himself to keep living roots here, which I find super interesting because it essentially is weak to something like a Ravaging Ghoul, unless he's thinking using it for the 2 damage on anything in particular. I would have been tempted to just dump living roots and just strictly say innovate and then hardcore search for a wild growth.
I guess with Fandral next, I mean, he could just not play the living roots here, and then if he was to innovate Fandral next turn, then you've got something that you can use with Fandral with the living roots. But yeah, I guess why would you throw away a one mana card when you just want to get a nice early lead against the warrior?
Yeah, considering what else is in the deck, I think you're going to find much worse things by mulliganing your living roots. And also, one of the key things about this entire matchup, about these kind of control versus control matchups, is if it's a warrior, they need to be building up armor as fast as possible. Living roots just completely negates hero power for the first couple of turns until it's dealt with.
Yeah, no, I do see where you're coming from. I think Osha now is worried that if he plays Innovate Fandral, he could be punished by something, and he wants to leave the Innovate there for starting to ramp ahead with that Nourish, because if you get Nourish out, then A, you could A, draw more cards, but B, you can give yourself 2 mana crystals, which can be incredibly useful. And you can see here the Ravaging Ghoul will come down and deal with these 1/1s.
Yep, and that's what you were worried about. Disciple of Cthulhu can kind of answer it if you want to waste the Innovate with your hero power, but
why bother for a 3/3?
Yeah, I'd want to be saving it for at least next turn so you can play the Arakoa.
I mean, you could even just Disciple of Cthulhu and leave it there. Like, he can get 3 damage to face, but then you can just trade it next turn. The odds of him having a second Ravaging Ghoul in hand are pretty slim, and if he does, it clears his own Ravaging Ghoul.
I quite like ramping though. Ramping's like one of the win conditions for any variant of Ramp Druid against the warrior.
But ramping how so?
With Innovate Nourish.
Okay.
I think both plays work. I think Disciple of Cthulhu, though, just isn't really that punishable by GreenSheep right now.
Is with his Disciple of Cthulhu.
That's true. Well, that's me. Shut up, isn't it?
I think that the theory now behind putting that down is right at the set we start, activating your Cthulhu is really important. This is one of those situations where activating it is very important. He can now, like Dan said, innovate out Dark Arakoa and activate Cthulhu.
Could also look at using the hero power, though, to clear some things off the board. Could hero power down the Ravaging Ghoul. You could even look at innovating your Twilight Elder. You still get control of the board in that scenario, but certainly with
you could
Disciple on board, you do play into things like Fiery War.
My concern with Druid in general is you innovate out these bigger minions, and then execute completely shuts you down.
Yeah. It depends on how much tempo the warrior is able to build despite that, though. So with these minions on board, that's kind of a scarier situation to throw down a big minion, because if he's then expending everything and still applying nothing to board, then that's where it doesn't matter as much that he's using his removal. But it's going to matter when he already has stuff on board and then is using stuff to remove. So,
and I like Fandral here because then if there is an execute or something like that, then at least you're baiting it out. Fiery War Axe coming off the top for GreenSheep to deal with this Fandral stack helm, which Osha clearly not very happy about. We've all been there. Yeah. I'm there a lot. Munchables watches me play.
I think Osha can just refill his hand here. If he's not going to commit to ramping, there's no point just doing the Nourish for 2 mana at this point because you've got nothing to do with it. And you've only got a curve coming out from 6 mana anyway next turn. I just like nourishing and getting a lot more sort of answers in hand.
Other option right now being Twilight Elder and Hero Power. I mean, it's not the worst play ever. You do get the extra on Cthulhu, but with Fiery War Axe in play, the odds of him having a second Ravaging Ghoul are fairly slim, so you feel fairly safe dropping the Twilight Elder, but I do just think playing Nourish on turn 5 is always going to be great. I actually like your idea slightly better, because again, it's putting something that's out of range of immediate removal. It's forcing him to play something that could not be quite on curve, like a sort of a 5 mana drop. And you can always have Nourish later, knowing that you've got a play next turn in turn 6 Arakoa.
Yep.
And Twilight Elder begs an answer because it will just continue to build your Cthulhu. So actually, on reflection, I much prefer the play of the Twilight Elder.
Yeah, I think Twilight Elder. I think you can use that Nourish to refill your hand later on if you need it. If I was going to play Nourish on turn 5, I'd like it as a ramp, but considering what's in his hand, I think Twilight Elder makes a lot of sense.
I've got to say, this series has dramatically slowed down. We went from the first 3 games just being basically face versus face and just like smashing those 3 out immediately, and now we're at 2-2 in a complete control matchup. Acolyte Pain just going to be playing this one slow from GreenSheep. However, it does now give him an answer for the Twilight Elder if Osha chooses to trade that, but does have a Dark Arakoa in hand. Wrath would be available for the...
There's lots of options because you could Cthulhu's Chosen and Wrath, or you could just straight up Dark Arakoa.
I quite like Wrath into Cthulhu's Chosen, just because it puts another threat on board, something else to be dealt with, but you keep your Twilight Elder out of range of that Fiery War Axe.
Sure.
I think I prefer Dark Arakoa here, because then next turn, if you are reluctant to play another minion because maybe you're worried about Brawl, you've got the option of Nourish plus Wrath, and that works well with your mana. I think you can just take out this Acolyte with your Twilight here.
Yeah, so long as you drop the Dark Arakoa, you're pretty safe to go for that trade.
And that's why I like him putting the Twilight Elder on board last turn, is just because the fact now GreenSheep hasn't really had an answer to it, you are building up more of a threatening board, and you are going to be encouraging the removal to come out of this.
Is there a world where you just hit face to get rid of his armor so you're not as weak to something like a shield block and then shield slam, which is what he's doing?
Osha says yes.
Absolutely, and this Cthulhu is starting to ramp up for the likes of Osha. We've seen very little Cthulhu build coming out from GreenSheep so far. He's not really found any of those minions.
Still, yeah, I mean, he was obviously going to lose to a shield block, shield slam armor up, but that's the whole turn gone, you know, for Osha, and everything now has been used for GreenSheep to clear this board.
This is the thing, GreenSheep has cleared the board, but that was his entire turn. Tempo is still in favour of Osha. Has the Cthulhu's Chosen to play, or can even just drop a Nourish, drop a Wild Growth, completely refill his hand.
I feel like...
although, you probably hold on to Wild Growth, right?
Yeah.
I want to get that card draw later.
I feel like dropping Cthulhu's Chosen is better, just because Nourish doesn't really give you many options for 2 mana after drawing the card. He's actually going to...
He's going to ramp up with the Wild Growth, like Munch said.
That's interesting.
Rather than save it for card draw later. I mean, I guess he's looking at what he's got left, and there are some high-end threats that he wants to put on, especially if he was to draw something like Cthulhu as well. You're one turn closer to it.
At least this turn, he can use Nourish and Wrath and get value out of it.
Druid of the Claw comes out.
So I think you Wrath for 1, right?
You Wrath for 1 first, for sure, and then you can always Nourish afterwards if you don't really draw anything that you want to play.
And that Emperor Thoracin, the Emperor is going to make a lot of difference as well for GreenSheep. I mean, back in the day, Emperor, whoever got Emperor first in a control matchup would often win, just because it is so detrimental, especially with cards that we actually see in GreenSheep's hands. I mean, if he had Bran in there as well, that could have been absolutely filthy.
Yeah.
So good.
Still, if he draws Bran next turn, he's still got... he hasn't actually activated Cthulhu yet, guys, I believe.
No.
So he can't actually make any crazy Bran plays happen, but if, you know, he's got the Cthulhu's Chosen in hand, so it would just be 1 turn away after that.
Also has another shield block as well, should he look to go for that. But well, we see a little bit of a face race coming out from Osha here, just SM Orking as he drops the charge. And I think basically saying, look, you've not had answers to any of my other minions these last few turns, you're not going to have an answer to my cat.
And I guess he's also wanting to get rid of that armor as well, but there is Cthulhu on the hand of GreenSheep. And one big thing in this matchup, it's hard for the Druid to deal with Cthulhu. I think the only way they can do is with Mulch.
Yeah.
Or their own Cthulhu.
Or their own Cthulhu, yeah, it's a good way to counteract it. Although, like you said, GreenSheep's Cthulhu hasn't really been built up that much, opposed to Osha's, which really is starting to get there.
So this is not bad for Osha. He can Nourish first, Hero Power, then use Disciple of Cthulhu. Double Swipe is not awful. If you're looking to have some sort of race here, having Double Swipe in hand is fine.
You could even Cthulhu's Chosen and Disciple of Cthulhu this turn.
Plays really heavily into Brawl, though. That is the problem. There is this element where you want to retain some kind of threat to throw down after Brawl.
And also, just Innovate can be so crucial, especially with things like Swipe in hand. Like, there's so many answers that you get from having that innovate available, being able to play something for 8 mana and then swipe on top of it.
I mean, the fact that GreenSheep hasn't been able to build up Cthulhu yet, and then look at his hand, like 3 minions, 3 big minions that he relies on. Oh, okay, so he has been able to build up Cthulhu.
The last Cthulhu,
just because of that last.
He's played 2 Cthulhu's Chosens this game, so he's just managed to hit it.
So, which is fortunate that he was able to, because those 3 guys.
Do you think about shield armoring up and shield slamming something here? I think you do.
The answer is yes. I think you just have to.
Oh wow!
God, he's not gonna hold on to that one for now. But swipes available in hand. This could start to look dicey for GreenSheep. You can swipe one of these.
So you could double swipe hero power and use Cthulhu's Chosen, or Disciple of Cthulhu even, and clear the board and still have a 4/4 and a 4/2 on board.
Yeah. That would be my thinking.
It's a lot of removal to play, but you haven't really got much to put on the board.
You don't have to double swipe though. You could always just swipe one, trade in with the 2/1, hero power and the 4/2 into the other, and then drop your Cthulhu's Chosen. You still have the 2 4-damage minions on board. You also build up your Cthulhu slightly more.
Yeah. I think using... I do like retaining one of the swipes, Munch, and I think blowing both swipes in one go is a bit dangerous.
I think Osha right now making that very same decision is going to go for the double swipe play here. Let's keep those minions alive and well. So it does get 8 damage to face as well this turn, which is an important point that we didn't really kind of point out there. That was one of the parts of the decisions as well, was that obviously by going for that trade, it removes 8 damage this turn. And especially against Control Warrior, pushing that health bar is so important. I
think he's just going to drop Cthulhu, and now, I mean, there needs to be a mulch or a Twin Emperor Veclaw with Bran Bronzebeard.
Bran into Twin Emperor is really nice, and then Osha can, I guess, just push face here, but the thing is, those Ancient Shield Bearers are going to be very painful, and I think they may end up winning this matchup for GreenSheep.
The Brawl, however, means that he will potentially lose his own Cthulhu. That leaves it with a 1 in 5 chance, I think. No, a 1 in 6 chance that he actually retains his Cthulhu. Now, obviously, if he retains his Cthulhu, that's concede for Osha. And it would be classic Osha style for GreenSheep to Brawl and retain his own 10/10 Cthulhu.
So if you are worried about Brawl as Osha, do you not brand this? Do you just play Twin Emperor so that you've only got the 3 minions on board?
I mean, you've got to bring up the question of what else does Bran do for you this game? Because the only other minions are just going to get like more ramp on Cthulhu or be Cthulhu itself, but without first dropping an Emperor Thorazon on both and having an Innovate in hand. It's such a rare scenario that you can build to Bran and Cthulhu, so I feel like dropping Bran here is kind of the only time in this game that you're going to get much value out of it.
I mean, I guess Bran into any kind of Cthulhu minion is always going to build up your Cthulhu that extra little bit more. But we've seen both Disciples of Cthulhu, I believe, for Osha, so you're not going to get like the 4 damage either. I think just going in here and just maybe hoping for a lack of Brawl is fine.
The 1 in 6 for GreenSheep is like whatever, because he can always just play Ancient Shield Bearer afterwards despite the result.
How big is Osha's Cthulhu right now?
It's like 17.
I was going to say, it's pretty huge.
Yep, that is just classic Osha. That is just classic Osha.
Osha is not happy about that one. I cannot say I blame him.
What a way
look at GreenSheep's face as well. I think he's well aware. He's like, well, that doesn't feel deserved.
And that is the play that will mean Osha cannot make finals. Unless he draws something miraculous here. Maybe his own Cthulhu here. He could innovate Cthulhu, but he doesn't. I mean, he can still stay alive.
Yeah,
he plays the Aragoa.
Obviously, he thinks he can stay alive.
Shield Slam in hand, he can't.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know that.
I mean, I feel so bad for Osha, because that is just classic Osha. You know, you talk about a guy who has struggled with RNG through all of the Premiership season, and to lose a 1 in 6 Brawl in a situation where he probably could have walked away with the game had he picked up some better cards, you know, like Cthulhu coming through in the next few turns or whatever. He was definitely not in a losing position in that game, but obviously Brawl just